Well, hello there. Welcome. Thanks for coming by to our adventure called Solving Equation. It is good to see you, even though I can't see you. But anyway, I'm assuming you're still there. So let's go ahead and solve equations. A couple things we're doing is we're going to isolate the variable x. We're trying to find out what x is. So we're going to undo this. So to do this, we're going to undo it. I'm going to start with my adding and subtracting. So for my equation of 5x plus 10 equals 20, I'm going to undo what I see. So I see that I'm adding 10, so I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides, and I end up with 5x equals 10. And then I see that I am multiplying by 5 here. So to undo multiplying by 5, I'm going to divide by 5, and I end up with x equals 10 divided by 5, which is 2. But I'm going to plug it back into my equation to see if it's true. So start to my original one. It's 5x, so it's 5 times 2 plus 10 equals 20. Is that correct? 5 times 2 is 10, plus 10 is 20. It is correct. Fiery check mark. All right, on my second one here, 5x minus 10 plus 20, why don't you press pause, and you work it out and press play to see if we did it the same way. Press pause. It's the thing that looks like the number 11. All right, I'm going to work it out now. So I see that I'm subtracting by 10 here, so I'm going to add 10. I'm going to keep undoing things. So I have 5x equals 30. Now the reason I added 10 is because I saw that it was subtracting. All right, now I look over here and I see it's 5 times x. So to undo multiplying, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide, but my property of equality says I need to divide both sides by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1x. 30 divided by 5 is 6. And so x equals 6. So I'm going to plug it in. 5 times 6 minus 10 equals 20. And that's 30 minus 10, which is 20, and that is true. All right, this next one, my answer is negative, so I have to be careful of that. Why don't you press pause, try it out, and press play to see how you did. All right, I'm going to work it out. All right, let's see how we did. I ended up with x equaling negative 6. Something I had to pay attention to is that this was negative. So because I was adding 10, I needed to subtract 10. And then when I subtract 10, a negative, and I subtract negative, which meant it gets more negative. So I'm at negative 30. That is a common error that happens. All right, I got another batch here. I'm going to go ahead and press pause, and you should press pause and work these out, and let's see how we did. I'm going to do all three. So you go ahead and do all three. All right, let's see how you did. A couple of details that I paid attention to was on this guy right here. I noticed that it was right here. Because this is a negative 5x, I got to make sure I divide both sides by negative 5. So when I get over here to divide by negative 5, a positive divided by a negative will leave me with negative answer. And then even right here, as I'm solving this out, this is 10 minus 5 times negative 2. So these two together, negative 5 times negative 2 is a positive 10. So 10 plus 10 equals 20. So a couple of details we got to keep an eye on. We got to watch those negatives. Same thing happened over here. This was a negative 5 right here. So I divided both sides by negative 5, but a negative divided by a negative will positive. And that was why my answer of 6 is positive. And I checked all these and they are correct. So make sure you look yours over. Look for your misconceptions and your misunderstandings and tidy those up. All right, this one's a distribution problem. So I'm going to do this in a couple different ways. So this first one, I'm going to distribute first. So it's 3, but because this is saying 3 times everything that's in here. So 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times, that's a positive 1, which is going to be 3, equals 21. And I'm going to go ahead and solve this. I'm doing all my adding and subtracting first. So I'm left with 3x. 21 minus 3, 17, 18. And then I divide by 3. Whoop, I like that to be a different color. Divide by 3. There we go. X equals 6. So let's check that out. 3 times 6 plus 3 equals 21. Is that true? 18, 19, it's 21. Yeah. Nicely done. Now I'm going to show you another way to do this. You can do this whole thing that I did already, and that's awesome. And this equation that I've written is the same equation. Okay, it's the same one, but I'm going to show you a different way to do it. Now, this is in front of the multiplication, so this is being all multiplied. But the 3 and the 21, I am going to just start off, and I'm going to divide everything by 3. Okay, and when I divide everything by 3, I'm going to leave this, whatever's in the parentheses, I'm going to leave that alone. But 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I'm left with x plus 1 equals 21, so 7. Okay, so now I have my little equation here, minus 1, minus 1. I end up with x equals 6. Notice we end up with the same thing. Same answer both ways. What's different, and both of these ways work, you can do either one or both. The first one I distributed out and then did my undoing. And the second one, I noticed that this 3 and this 21 have something in common, and I worked them out that way. Let's look at this guy. This is kind of the same thing. I'm going to press pause, and I want you to try this out. I'm going to divide by 3, so I end up with 2 plus 3x plus 3 equals 6x. I'm combining terms, so I've got a 3x plus 3, 4, 5 equals 6x. I'm still adding and subtracting, so I have x's over here and I have x's over here, so I'm going to subtract all the x's on this side and subtract them from this side, so I end up with 5 equals 3x. And then I'm going to divide by 3 because it says 3 times x, and to undo it I'm going to divide by 3. So I'm left with x equals 5/3. Now if I notice over here, I'm going to look again and see, is there anything I can simplify with? Can I do the 2, the 3, and the 6? And there's actually nothing that I can divide everything by that'll help me, so I'm not going to do that. This would be a really bad wrong answer, is some people will want to add those together and turn this into 5 times x plus 1 equals 6x. And that would not be true. We cannot do that because order of operations tells us we need to, let's get that out of there. We're going to need to distribute this first. We need to multiply first. So that's a common error. What do we got here? Oh, we have variables on both sides. These are the same, and we can solve this in a couple different ways. I'm going to go ahead and get all my x's over to this side. So I have 15 equals 14x plus 45, and I'm going to subtract 45 from both sides. I end up with 15 minus 45, I end up with negative 30 equals 14x. And kind of a funky answer, but 14 is being multiplied, so I'm going to divide by 14. And really, this is a bizarre answer. I'm going to leave it for now, so it's negative 30/14, but that can be simplified. X equals 15/7. Negative, though. So it's a wild answer, but that can happen. That kind of answer can happen. Now, the reason why I wanted to rework this one is because let's say I want to go the other way. Let's say I want to go negative 10x. Let's say I do it that direction. So I end up with 15 minus 14x equals 45. And then I subtract 15 from both sides. So I end up with negative 14x equals 30, because 45 minus 15 is 30, okay? And then I'm going to divide by negative 14, divide by negative 14, and end up with x equals negative 30/14, which equals negative 15/7, which is the same answer. So what I'm showing here is that it really doesn't matter what you add and subtract from both sides. As long as you do it to both sides, you're going to be good. You're definitely set. What did I want to do on this guy? I think there's the same thing. Oh, I just changed some stuff. Why don't you press pause and you work these out? And actually, I do want to work these out because it's this negative. That's why I have these in here to practice. So this is saying 5, and this is negative 2 times x. So it's negative 2x. And this is saying negative 2 times, and that's a positive 1. So it's going to be negative 2 equals 12. That's what that's saying. Now notice that this equation looks similar, but it's a little bit different. So I still have my 5, and this is saying -2. I know it says -2, but it really is a -2 times x, which is going to be -2x. And then it's a -2 times, that's what this is saying, times the -1. And a negative times a negative will be positive, so it ends up being +2. Okay, so that's how these work out. Notice they're a little bit different. I'm paying attention to my negative. This is the guy I have to pay attention to right there. All right, I'm going to pause and finish working these out so you can check your answers. All right, on the first equation, I end up with x equals -9/2. And for the second equation, I end up with -5/2. And you might have turned them into a mixed number, and that's quite fantastic. All right, you know what? The next few equations are just a smattering of special situations that happen. So with the -4x equals 16, I'm going to divide both sides by -4. I'm taking the 4 with me, and that's really what I'm trying to do. So 16 divided by -4 is going to be -4. This one right here, v divided by 3. So to undo dividing by 3, I'm going to multiply by 3. And this is how I show it. What you see in green is ways to show of what I'm doing. So I end up with v equals 3 times -11 would be -33. Again, watching my negatives. Let's see what's happening on this side. Oh, this is in parentheses and it's negative, so the only way to get rid of that, true, it is adding, but it is negative. So the only way to get rid of that is to add 2. So if I have plus -2 and I add 2 more right here, it's going to clear it out. So I'm left with x equals -30. So these are special cases. These are little things that happens, not special cases, they're just details. Details that we have to pay attention to. Where am I? I digress. Ooh, I have -n divided by 10. Okay, so I see division, so I know I'm going to multiply because that's the opposite. I see that it's a 10 down here, so I'm going to multiply by 10. But you know what? I'm going to grab the negative with it, and that's going to help me solve things. So -10 times -3 is going to be 30. And really, this whole side right here ends up being n, because a negative divided by a negative times a negative will be positive. And so that's one good strategy we're doing here. This 1/5 n, remember this 1/5 n is actually saying n over 5. That means the same thing. And if that's what that means, then I'm going to multiply everything by 5. Because if 1/5 of n is equal to n over 5 is division. So to undo division, I'm going to multiply by 5. So this side ends with n, and -2 times 5 is going to be -10. This situation here, x minus -4, that's actually saying the only way to take away negative, the only way to take away debt is to add. So this equation actually is equal to this equation. And that's the one I'm going to use because I can see it easier on what to do. X equals 0. And that can actually happen. Let's see if that's true. So I'm going to plug it back in to see if it's true because that answer is a little bit fishy. 0 minus -4 is 4, which is actually saying 0 plus 4 is 4. And it is true. Fiery check mark. That's awesome. All right, that's it. Keep practicing, keep trying stuff. You only get good at this after practice. All right, I am going to cover my little brother's clothes in catnip and watch the neighborhood cats chase him.